Hi, this is Brett Ingram, award-winning entrepreneur, and today I want to share with you the transformational power of giving. So it's been scientifically proven that feeling and expressing gratitude has a positive effect on brain chemistry, and we can actually rewire how we think and feel. So there's been a lot of studies and a lot of information and a lot of posts and content and everything else about the idea of gratitude, the power of gratitude. And I don't think for a lot of people that's really a mystery anymore. People sort of accept that and understand the fact that if we express gratitude, if we feel gratitude, then that has a very positive and profound impact on our lives, both physically, mentally, psychologically, and every other way. So being thankful and grateful for what we have and for the people in our lives makes us happier and it makes us feel better. But what about the act of giving? What effect does that have on us? So it's not exactly the same. I mean, feeling gratitude is just being grateful for something, being thankful for something. But actually the act of giving, the question becomes, what about that? Does that have the same positive effect? Does it have a different positive effect? What happens when we engage in giving? In business, we're taught to focus on profit. As an entrepreneur, it makes total sense. We can't survive without profit. We can't survive unless we make enough to not only pay our bills, but have something left for us to be able to survive on and us to be able to use for things that we need. And so it's logical. It makes a lot of sense. But like anything else in life, when it becomes extreme, it actually can paradoxically cost us and cause our profits to fall and our business even to fail. I knew a person, and we'll just call him Person X, and he was in my industry. He was in the software business, and he had forged some relationships, and he sort of came out of nowhere and started producing good affiliate earnings when he was promoting other people's products. And that is the fastest way to get yourself into the industry, because if you could promote other people's products and you could get those to sell, they're going to notice you. They're going to notice that you're making all these sales of their product. They're going to be excited about that, and they're going to be anxious to work with you more. And so that's sort of how this guy got started. I don't know, what his initial sort of approach was, but as he started to get more into the industry, then he started to launch products. And as he started to launch products, more and more people were promoting them for him because he was promoting for them and doing really well. And so he did a really good job sort of getting into the industry and breaking in really fast. But he had a certain sort of attitude and a certain way that he approached it that actually made it turn in a very different way. So one of the things that he would do is he was very mercenary with his attitude about promotion, his attitude about his own launches, and his attitude about everybody else's. So basically the way this guy operated was, if he felt as though you could produce a lot of sales for him, then he was okay with that and would sort of just promote your product and let that go. But for everybody else, he ran things like every single thing was broken down into dollars and cents. And I remember one time having a discussion with him because I had a product that was coming out. And, I at the time wasn't, promoting, or my launches weren't doing quite as well. And so he looked at it and then he said, oh, well, here's the thing. Like, I want this much up front. I want a higher commission percentage. And if if the sales don't convert at a certain rate, then I want you to guarantee me you'll pay me X amount of dollars even if I don't make sales based on your product. So he wanted a guarantee, which, if you know anything about affiliate marketing, that isn't how it works. In affiliate marketing, what you do is you promote products you think you can sell and that your market wants, and based on that, you'll make commissions based on what they sell. And if you do really well, you make a lot, and if you don't, you don't. So in our industry, it's sort of an unwritten rule and an agreement that we promote for our partners. Sometimes we have partners that launch things that don't really work well with our list, but we promote them anyway because of our relationship with the partner. So it's a relationship driven business. This guy came in with a totally different attitude and he was able to break into the industry. But what ended up happening is he alienated everybody because what he was doing is so focused on dollars and cents, he was nickel and diming everybody. Well, if I, make this amount of sales and the bonus isn't high enough, then will you add this much to it? If you do this. And so he was negotiating to a ridiculous degree with every single partner and marketer. And as he started to get a little bit more successful with some of his launches, he got more and more ruthless about this. Then he actually got even worse and he started doing some things that were unethical in like cookie stuffing, where he was putting it in a way so several offers, if somebody clicked on one of his links, it would cookie them for several offers. So if they went and bought any of those products, he would get credit for it. He was doing things that were sort of underhanded, if not illegal, certainly unethical, and definitely frowned upon in our market. And so what ended up happening is this guy went from somewhere, like nowhere, and he built himself a reputation and started to make waves in the industry. And then he turned around and ruined the entire thing because he ended up being sort of ostracized by everybody. Nobody wanted to work with him anymore. Nobody wanted to do business with the guy anymore. And long story short, it wasn't very long until his exit was as abrupt as his entrance, because those kinds of people don't survive in an industry that's based on relationships. He abused every relationship that he could just to make a buck. And, so to him, yes, he was making profit, but it was a short-term mentality that ultimately drove him right out of the industry. And in fact, there was a very public sort of, sort of smackdown that he got on in one of the Skype groups because he tried to say something and somebody knew better, and they basically told him, go away or it's going to get a lot worse for you. So basically, he ended up literally getting chased out of the industry. His story had a tragic end, and he was forced out of the industry, and he lost all of his colleagues and lost all of his partners because he was just flat out too cutthroat. It wasn't just about making profit. It was about making profit and not caring about anybody else except himself. Now, that's a terrible story, and nobody wants to suffer that fate. At the same time, here's the flip side. I have another partner that I work with, and I've worked with him for several years. And, he's had some launches that have done really, really well. And sometimes, my list, for whatever reason, doesn't respond that well, and it doesn't always make him a tremendous amount of sales. But as he's a great partner, I always promote his stuff, even if I have other stuff I could promote that would make me more. And he's always promoted for me and always been very accessible and communicative and sort of had the real essence of a partnership. Well, it was interesting to me because around the holidays a year ago, I got a package in the mail. And when I opened the package, it was actually a gift from him. And the gift was one of those sort of, it's like a notebook, but you can write on it with this erasable marker, and you can scan the pages directly into your cell phone or your app online, so you can take notes and basically translate them online instantly. And so he sent this out with a note that basically said, listen, here's a thank you for being a great partner. Over the last year, I look forward to doing a lot more business together. Now, this guy didn't need to do this. He already had a great established reputation in the industry. He already creates and launches really good products. And he's already a good partner in terms of doing reciprocal mailings. He doesn't count clicks or wait and see how much he makes and then decide whether to promote. He does it because there's a relationship there. And I can tell you that my interest in doing whatever he would ever ask me to do is so much higher because of that. And so I will promote his stuff even if I don't make any money. That's the story about going above and beyond and having a completely different mentality where he is a giving mindset instead of a what can I get for it mindset, and he is at the top of the industry. Another guy that I've known for several years, and we're not friends or we're not close, but we met at a conference years ago, and we actually promoted each other's stuff for a while. is Russell Brunson. And he's, really well known and sort of internet famous at this point because he's done so many different things. And his ClickFunnels thing has obviously risen to great success. But, he always talked about in all the things that every time he presents, is about serving. Finding a market and serving it. It's never about, yes, he makes a lot of money, and yes, the profit is one of the offshoots from that. But the fact of the matter is, his mentality is, how do I serve? Because I know when I serve, I get things back. When I give, I get. And so, he has that sort of mentality, and it's led him to go from sort of a small, like, solopreneur guy to build a business, to connect with some of the most famous and successful people, around, because he's had this mentality. And he's always run it that way. He's always looked to give first and not worried about what he's going to get in return. And because of that, it's paid it back in spades. And I know as an entrepreneur and as a marketer or a business owner, when you are struggling, when you don't have extra money, the hardest thing to do is want to give anything for free, give advice for free, give time for free, give products for free, because you don't have it. But that's the paradox, and that's the irony. As Bob Berg and John David Mann say in their book, The Go-Giver, all the great fortunes in the world have been created by men and women who had a greater passion for what they were giving, their product, service, or idea, than for what they were getting. And I couldn't have said it better. That summarizes it perfectly. And here's the thing. Even if we aren't trying to become a titan of industry, right? So even if that isn't our goal and we're looking to absolutely change the world, there are proven benefits that we get from giving. The first benefit that we get is improved emotional well-being and reduced stress. It's just a fact. I know when I go to the grocery store and there's a veteran standing out there with the little bucket, for, rides for veterans or whatever. And, it's some guy that served in one of the world wars or, Vietnam or Korea or whatever. Not so much world wars anymore because it's been so long, most of those people have passed by now. But when I see veterans and I see people out there and they're collecting for a good cause, I always want to donate. Salvation Army, whatever it is. And it may not be a lot, but I know every single time that I reach in my pocket to give them something, I get more than what I give because I feel so good, even though it's so little. And I know my individual contribution makes such a little difference. It's the act of the giving that matters. And I know that, for those people who are standing out there volunteering their time to raise money for people who need it, it matters a great deal. So we get improved emotional well-being and reduced stress. It helps us in our daily lives. When we give, and by the way, there's a scientific reason for this. When we give, we activate our brain's reward center. The National Institute of Health did a study, on this very thing, and they found that our brains release dopamine and endorphins, which are the sort of the feel-good, chemicals or whatever in our brains that make us feel great and give us joy and satisfaction. So when we're giving, we're naturally in a state of feeling good because that's the way our brain reacts to it. That is, scientific, it's, biological. So it's not anything that anybody's making up or trying to convince people to be givers. The second benefit that we get is greater self-esteem, greater self-worth, and a sense of purpose and meaning in our lives. When we give, we feel better about ourselves. When all we do is take, when every relationship, when every interaction we look at from the perspective of what we can get from it, whether we consciously recognize it or not, each one of those is a little cut on our self-esteem. Each one of those is a little ding, because we know in our hearts, we know deep down as human beings that it isn't good to always be taking. It isn't good to always be in a state of looking at everybody as a means to an end for what we can get from them or what value they give us. So our own self-esteem, our own self-worth goes up when we give and goes down when all we do is take. In our purpose and meaning in lives. It's funny because I was just doing a bunch of keyword research. And I was doing keyword research on personal growth and self-help and personal development, all those kinds of things. And you know what keyword phrase or sort of bucket of phrases comes up over and over and over again with massive amounts of searches, which actually shocked me, is purpose of life. What's the meaning of life? How do I give my life meaning? What's the why in my life? All of these kinds of things, because people are searching for that day in and day out. Everybody wants to know that there's some meaning that they have in their life, that there's some purpose to what we're doing here. There's some purpose to what we're, what we're setting out to accomplish in our existence. And so it's really important to have that sense, to have that feeling. And if we don't have a grand vision and a grand goal, if we give, it gives us more of that sense, because just that in and of itself means we're touching other people's lives and improving their lives, and thereby giving our own lives meaning. Because we absolutely have meaning, so does everybody else on the planet if they're giving and helping other people. The third benefit is it improves our relationships and our connections with other people. When we're in a state of giving, we're in a state of feeling good, and that is contagious. And other people recognize our value when we give. If you've ever been at a charity event, or you've ever donated your time or volunteered or whatever, there's always a positive vibe in the place, because every single person in there is giving. Every single person, and so everyone you look around, you have instant respect for everybody there, because they're all in the same situation. We're all giving, we're all contributing. And that in and of itself, right, fosters deeper connections. We automatically have something in common with everybody in the room, because we're all willing to give. It tells us something about our character. It tells us something about the traits and values of everybody that's in that room with us. And that is super powerful, to be able to create better connections. And by the way, they feel that way about us too. So that is really powerful and valuable. The other thing that it does, the fourth thing, is that it actually gives us better physical health. Believe it or not, when we feel good, our physical health improves as well. There's a reason that when we emotionally don't feel well, or psychologically don't feel well, our bodies don't look good. Our eyes droop, our shoulders sink, our skin doesn't look that good. I remember earlier in life when, my wife and I, we were going through some like big struggles. We had tons of stress and pressures and all these other things going on. And I remember one day she turned to me and she looked at me and she said, your skin doesn't even look good. And I remember thinking, wow, what a weird thing to say. But when I look back at photos of that period of time in my life, she was right. My skin didn't look good. My complexion didn't look good. I looked sickly. And there was nothing physically wrong with me. I just had a tremendous amount of stress. And it's absolutely true that makes a big difference. So we physically feel better also. So those are tons of different reasons. And it's not just hocus pocus or conjecture here. Giving actually has a real and profound effect. There's one other thing that I just want to give a shout out here. Years ago, when I was getting started in my entrepreneurial journey, it was, one of the first few years that I was doing digital business. I actually received a package in the mail, and it was this little sort of gratitude journal. Not one that you write in, but it was a gratitude and affirmations journal, and it just has like line after line after line of all these affirmations that you can say and think and feel, and all these things you can be grateful for, but it's personalized to me. So somebody actually sent it to me, and here's the crazy part. I don't know who it was. It didn't have a name on it. There was no return address. I have no idea to this day who sent me that. But I've been forever thankful, because what a thoughtful gift to send. It probably wasn't very expensive. It's not like it spent a lot of money. But the fact of the matter is, the idea that somebody would send that to me and not even worry about the recognition for having sent it shows me what a successful and positive and great person that person is. So whoever it is, if you happen to be listening to this, thank you. And I have always appreciated it, and I still have it. I think it's a really thoughtful and amazing gift. And I was super touched by that, because I think that, It's not even the fact that we get credit, it's the fact that we do the giving and the impact that it has on the people receiving it that matters also. So the takeaway here is that while entrepreneurs need to focus on the bottom line to some extent, there's no doubt about it, it's important to have perspective and recognize that if we want to make an impact or change the world, we do that not just by building an empire, but also by giving and serving. When we extend a hand to help others, we get rewarded too. And it feels great to know that we're making a difference. The more of us that do that, and the more often that we do it, the better the world will be for it.